The reception hall fell silent. My stepdaughter Haley stood at the head table, champagne glass raised, her wedding dress catching the light from the chandeliers above. 200 guests turned to watch her toast. My wife Diane squeezed my hand under the table. "I want to thank everyone who made this day possible," Haley said, her voice carrying that confident warmth she'd developed over the years. "But most of all, I need to thank my father. Dad, you've always been my hero. Even when we were apart, I knew you believed in me. This moment, this beautiful wedding, it's because of you. I love you, Dad." She looked directly at a man standing near the bar. Not me, her biological father, Kevin Lawson, who'd flown in from Calgary the night before. He raised his glass, beaming like he'd orchestrated the entire evening. I sat 3 seats away from my wife, separated by her sister and brother-in-law. I felt Diane's grip tighten. A warning, maybe, or an apology. I couldn't tell anymore. Haley continued. "And of course, thank you to everyone else who helped along the way. Mom, Marcus, you've been supportive. Really, supportive. That's what she called 23 years of raising her. Supportive. Like I was a helpful neighbor who occasionally shoveled the driveway." I smiled, lifted my glass, said nothing. But something inside me finished breaking. Not with a crash, but with a quiet click, like a lock finally turning after years of rust. I met Diane 23 years ago at a community center in North Vancouver. She was running an after-school program for kids while finishing her social work degree. I'd just sold my share of a commercial plumbing business my brother and I had built from nothing after our father passed. I was 40, tired of 60-hour weeks, looking for something meaningful to fill my time. Diane was 35, raising her daughter alone. Kevin had left when Haley was 4, moved to Calgary for a sales job that promised better money and fewer responsibilities. He'd promised to stay involved. He'd promised a lot of things. When I first met Haley, she was 5 years old, with pigtails and a gap-toothed smile that could melt steel. She was wary of me at first, the way children are when they've learned that adults sometimes disappear. I didn't push. I showed up. I helped with puzzles, read bedtime stories when I stayed for dinner, fixed her bicycle when the chain came off. I made her laugh by making silly voices during cartoon movies. By the time she was 7 and Diane and I got married, Haley had started calling me Marcus. Never Dad. I understood. She had a dad, even if he only called on birthdays and Christmas, even if his visits were sporadic and always cut short by some work emergency. Kevin was her father. I was just there. But being there meant something. It meant driving her to figure skating practice at 6 in the morning, 3 times a week. It meant staying up until midnight, helping her build a diorama of the Haida Gwaii ecosystem for her grade 5 project. It meant teaching her to drive in an empty parking lot behind the superstore, my heart in my throat every time she hit the brake too hard. When Haley was 12, she decided she wanted to be a lawyer. She'd watched some courtroom drama on TV and became obsessed with the idea of arguing cases, defending the innocent. I bought her books about famous Canadian court cases. I took her to watch a real trial at the Vancouver law courts, sitting in the gallery while a defense lawyer made his closing arguments. She was transfixed. Kevin called that week his monthly check-in. "So I hear you want to be a lawyer, kiddo," he said over speakerphone while Haley did her homework. "That's my girl. I always knew you had the brains for it. Must be in the genes." He laughed. Haley laughed. I went to the garage and organized my tools until my hands stopped shaking. High school was complicated. Haley grew more distant, more interested in her phone and her friends than family dinners. "Normal teenager stuff," Diane said. But there was something else. Haley had started talking about Kevin more. "My dad says this. My dad thinks that." Never mind that Kevin called maybe once a month, that his visits had dwindled to twice a year, that half his promises ended in last-minute cancellations. The summer before grade 12, Kevin invited Haley to Calgary for 2 weeks. She was ecstatic. When she came back, she had a new watch he'd bought her, and a head full of stories about his downtown condo, his BMW, his important clients. "Dad's doing really well," she told Diane over dinner. "He says, when I finish law school, he might be able to get me a job at his company. They have lawyers on retainer." I chewed my salmon, said nothing. Kevin was in insurance sales. His company was a regional brokerage. But Haley saw him as this successful, glamorous figure who swooped in with gifts and promises. I was just the guy who made her lunches and enforced her curfew. When Haley got into UBC Law with a partial scholarship, we had a family celebration. Kevin sent a text. "Proud of you, kiddo. Knew you had it in you. Let me know if you need anything." The scholarship covered about 40% of tuition. Vancouver rent, textbooks, living expenses, bar prep courses, it all added up. Diane and I talked about it privately. I'd invested well after selling the business. We had savings. "Let's see what Kevin contributes," Diane said. He promised he'd help. Kevin sent $3,000 in September of Haley's first year. A check with future lawyer fund, written in the memo line. It covered about 6 weeks of her one-bedroom apartment in Kitsilano. I paid the rest. $12,000 that year, $14,000 the next, $16,000 by third year, when she needed better housing during her articling preparations. 4 years of law school, then the bar exam prep, then the articling position that paid barely enough to cover her transit pass. I kept the receipts, though I never intended to use them. $68,000 for her education alone. Then there was the car. A used Honda Civic, reliable enough to get her to her articling interviews across the lower mainland. I co-signed the loan when she couldn't qualify on her own. $8,000 I was technically responsible for. The apartment deposits. Twice she'd moved for better locations, and twice I'd provided the damage deposit and first month's rent until she got settled. Another $4,000. The credit card. I'd added her as an authorized user when she was 20 to help build her credit. For emergencies, Diane had said. Haley's emergencies included bar exam prep courses, professional clothing for interviews, and a weekend trip to Whistler for stress relief. The balance sat at $6,000. And then the wedding. Haley met Nathan at a mutual friend's engagement party. He was an accountant, stable, kind, the sort of man who holds doors open and remembers your mother's birthday. They dated for 2 years, got engaged on a trip to Banff, and started planning a wedding that somehow ballooned into a 200-person event at a heritage estate in West Vancouver. Kevin called when he heard about the engagement. "This is wonderful news. I'll definitely help with the wedding. That's what fathers are for." He sent $5,000. Generous, by his standards. He also sent a list of 10 relatives from his side who absolutely had to be invited. I paid for the rest. The venue deposit, $22,000. The catering, $18,000. The photographer and videographer, $8,000. The flowers, the DJ, the cake, the rentals, the alterations on Diane's dress when she lost weight from stress, $52,000, not counting the honeymoon I'd secretly booked as a wedding gift 2 weeks in Portugal, business class flights, a luxury hotel in Lisbon that Haley had mentioned dreaming about. Kevin arrived the night before the wedding, straight from the airport. Designer suit, expensive cologne, the kind of tan you get from golf courses and sales conferences. He hugged Haley like they saw each other every weekend instead of twice a year. "My little girl," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "A lawyer and a bride. I always knew you'd make me proud." I was carrying boxes of table centerpieces from my truck. No one noticed. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. Haley glowed. Nathan cried at the altar, the good kind of tears. When the officiant asked who gives this woman, Kevin stood up proudly. "Her mother and I do." I stayed seated next to Diane's sister. My role was to escort Diane down the aisle as mother of the bride. I did. Haley hugged her mother, nodded at me, and turned to face her groom. At the reception, Kevin was everywhere, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, telling anyone who would listen about his daughter, the lawyer. "Sharp as a tack," he said to Nathan's parents. "Gets it from me. I was always good with words." He found me near the bar during cocktail hour. He'd had a few glasses of champagne already, cheeks flushed. "Marcus, hell of an event, eh? You and Diane really outdid yourselves." "Thanks," I said. "Must have cost a fortune. But hey, worth it for our girl, right?" He clapped me on the shoulder, the gesture of someone who assumes familiarity he hasn't earned. "Worth it. You know, I really appreciate you stepping up all these years. Diane's lucky to have someone stable. That's important for kids' stability." He said the word like it was slightly beneath him, like he was complimenting a reliable minivan. "Right. The big stuff, though, the drive, the ambition, that's DNA." He winked. "Nature over nurture, right?" I looked at him, really looked, and I realized he genuinely believed it. Believed that his quarterly phone calls and annual visits had somehow shaped Haley more than the 23 years I'd spent actually raising her. Right, I said. DNA. Then came the speech. Haley at the microphone, thanking her father for making her who she is. Not me, Kevin. The man who'd contributed maybe $15,000 over 2 decades. The man who'd missed her law school graduation because of a work conflict. The man who'd never sat with her through a single nightmare or helped her with a single homework assignment. I kept smiling. I raised my glass when everyone else did. But something inside me turned to ice. Diane found me later, standing alone on the terrace overlooking the water. The city lights sparkled across Burrard Inlet, beautiful and cold. Tom, I'm sorry. I'll talk to her. Don't. She didn't mean to. She meant exactly what she said. She thanked her father. That's not me, Diane. I've never been her father. I've just been, what did she call it? Supportive. You're being dramatic. She loves you. Does she? Or does she love what I provide? Diane didn't answer. That night, after the last guest had left, and Haley and Nathan had driven off in their decorated car, I sat in my study. Diane had gone to bed, exhausted. I opened my filing cabinet. I hadn't meant to keep such careful records, but some habits from running a business don't die. I had everything. Bank statements, transfer confirmations, receipts, loan documents, 4 years of law school support, the car, the credit cards, the apartment deposits, the wedding, $138,000. I pulled up Kevin's contributions on a separate sheet. $3,000 the first year of law school, nothing the second. $2,000 the third year after Haley made Dean's List. $5,000 for the wedding. $10,000 total. Over 23 years. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. The next morning, I started making phone calls. First, the credit card company. I removed Haley as an authorized user. The representative asked if there was a problem. Just time for her to build her own credit, I said. She's a married woman now. Next, the car insurance. The Honda was still under my policy, cheaper that way, Diane had said years ago. I called and removed it. The representative warned me that Haley would need to secure her own policy immediately or risk driving uninsured. She'll figure it out. Then I called the hotel in Lisbon. Canceled the 2-week honeymoon reservation. The penalty was $1,500. I paid it. Then I called the airline. Canceled the business class flights. Another $800 in fees. I didn't cancel anything that would strand her immediately. She and Nathan had booked their own flight to Mexico for a short trip before the Lisbon honeymoon was supposed to start. They'd be fine, but I pulled back every safety net I'd quietly spread beneath her for 23 years. Then I drafted an email. Short. Factual. Haley, I hope the Mexico trip is going well. I need to inform you of some changes to your financial arrangements. You're no longer an authorized user on my credit card time to build your own credit as a married woman. The car has been transferred off my insurance policy, so you'll need to secure your own coverage before you drive it again. I've also attached documentation showing the expenses I've covered over the years for your education and the wedding. I thought you should have the full picture. I'm proud of what you've accomplished, but you're an adult now with a husband and a career. It's time to stand on your own. Warmly, Marcus. I attached the spreadsheets, the law school expenses, the car, the credit cards, the wedding costs, all of it, itemized. Then I typed one more line. P.S. The Portugal honeymoon was my wedding gift to you. I've canceled the reservations. Perhaps your father can help arrange something. I hit send. Diane found me in the study an hour later. She'd been crying. What did you do? What needed to be done? Haley called. She tried to use the credit card for something at the airport and it was declined. She's embarrassed, Marcus. Confused. She has a husband now. He has credit cards. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Diane? That I keep funding her life while she credits someone else for it? That I smile and nod while Kevin takes bows for 23 years of my work? She's young. She doesn't understand. She's 28. She's a lawyer. She understands contracts and evidence better than most people. She just never bothered to look at the evidence of her own life. So you punish her on her honeymoon? I'm not punishing her. I'm stopping. Stopping what? Stopping pretending that what I do matters to her. Stopping being the invisible man who pays the bills while Kevin gets the speeches. Diane sat down hard on the leather chair across from my desk. The same chair Haley used to curl up in when she was little, reading books while I worked. She loves you, Marcus. She thanked Kevin, Diane, not me, Kevin, in front of 200 people, in front of Nathan's entire family. She thanked the man who sent $10,000 over 2 decades and showed up twice a year. She thanked him for making her who she is. She doesn't know the numbers. Then why didn't you tell her? Diane went silent. All those years, I continued, every time I wrote a check, every time I transferred money for rent or books or bar exam prep, you could have told her. Marcus is paying for this. Marcus is the one supporting you. But you didn't. You let her believe it was some combination of her scholarship and Kevin's help and magical money that appeared from nowhere. I didn't want to make Kevin look bad. Kevin made himself look bad by not showing up. You just helped him hide it. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Diane. I spent 23 years raising a daughter who doesn't even acknowledge me as her parent. That's not fair, but it's also my fault. I let it happen. I stayed silent because I thought, that's what good fathers do, they don't keep score. Well, I'm done not keeping score. We didn't speak for the rest of the day. Haley and Nathan came back from Mexico a week later. They were supposed to leave for Portugal 2 days after that, but of course those plans were canceled. Haley called Diane, furious and confused. He canceled our honeymoon, Mom. The hotel, the flights, everything. And he sent me this spreadsheet like I'm some kind of client he's billing. I listened from the hallway. Diane's voice was strained, trying to calm her. Honey, I think you need to talk to Marcus directly. About what? About how he's throwing money in my face? Dad called me this morning, totally confused. He said Marcus sent him some kind of passive-aggressive email about taking over honeymoon arrangements. Dad doesn't understand what's happening. What did your father say he'd do? A pause. He said he'd look into it. But flights to Portugal are expensive, Mom. And he's got some work thing coming up, some conference he can't miss. So Kevin's not going to help. He's trying. It's complicated for him right now. It's always complicated for him, Haley. That was Diane. My Diane. For the first time in 23 years, she didn't make excuses for Kevin. What's that supposed to mean? It means you should look at that spreadsheet Marcus sent you. Really look at it. And then you should ask yourself some hard questions. Haley hung up. Diane came to find me in the garage, where I was pretending to organize tools. She's upset. I know. Kevin's not going to help with the honeymoon. I know that, too. What happens now? Now she figures out the same thing I figured out at the reception. That the person who shows up isn't always the person who gets the credit. And sometimes you have to stop showing up before people notice you were ever there. 2 weeks later, Haley came to the house. Saturday morning. Diane was at her yoga class. I was in the backyard, replacing some boards on the deck that had rotted over the winter. Marcus. I turned. She stood on the patio, arms crossed, wearing the defensive posture of someone who's been forced to confront something they'd rather avoid. Haley. How's married life? We need to talk. I set down my hammer. All right. She sat on the patio chair, the same one she'd sat in countless summer afternoons, doing homework while I grilled dinner. I leaned against the railing, waiting. I read the spreadsheet, she said finally. All of it. And I called Dad. Asked him how much he'd contributed over the years. What did he say? He got defensive. Said he'd sent what he could, when he could. Said I should be grateful he stayed in my life at all after the divorce, that a lot of fathers just disappear completely. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. He actually said that, like showing up twice a year and making promises he never kept was some kind of gift. Did he give you a number? Eventually. He estimated around $40,000. He seemed pretty proud of that. She looked at me. 40,000, Marcus. That's less than a third of what you spent on my wedding alone. I wasn't keeping score. Then why did you keep all those receipts? It was a fair question. I thought about it before answering. I think part of me always knew this day would come. Not consciously, but somewhere deep down. I knew that eventually I'd need to see the truth written down in black and white, to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that I actually did what I thought I did. You're not crazy. Her voice cracked. I was just, I don't know, blind. You weren't blind. You saw what you wanted to see. Kevin was the exciting one, the one who showed up with gifts and stories about his glamorous life. I was just background, The guy who made you eat your vegetables and enforced your curfew. That's not all you were, isn't it? Tell me one thing I did that you credited me for before you saw that spreadsheet. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Thinking. Searching. The diorama, she said finally. Grade 5. The Haida Gwaii ecosystem. You stayed up until 2 a.m. helping me finish it. You remember that? I got an A+. Mrs. Patterson put it in the display case. She smiled weakly. I told everyone my dad helped me with it. You did? Yeah. But I meant you. I called you my dad to my friends. It was easier to explain than the whole stepdad thing. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry, Marcus. I'm so sorry. I looked at this woman I'd helped raise, crying on my patio, and felt the anger start to thaw. Not disappear, it was still there, probably always would be, but thaw enough that I could see past it. I don't want your apology, I said. Then what do you want? I want you to understand something. For 23 years, I showed up. I paid attention. I invested everything. I had time, money, love, because I thought that's what family means. I never asked for recognition because I told myself that real love doesn't need it. But here's what I learned, Haley. Silence isn't humility. It's erasure. By never asking for acknowledgement, I taught you that I didn't need it, that I didn't matter. You matter. Do I? Or do I matter now because the money stopped? She flinched. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's honest, and I'm done being dishonest to keep the peace. So what now? You cut me off forever? We just pretend the last 23 years didn't happen? No, but I'm done being invisible. I'm done being the safety net you forget exists until you need it. You're a grown woman now, Haley. A lawyer, a wife. You have a career and a husband and a life that you built with my help, but you built it. Time to stand on your own. And if I need help, then you ask. And we talk about it like adults. No more assumptions. No more magical money that appears from nowhere. You want something from me, you ask for it, and you acknowledge where it comes from. She nodded slowly. That's fair. One more thing. What? Nathan. Your husband. Does he know any of this? The real numbers. Who actually paid for what? She looked away. No, I was. Embarrassed to tell him. Tell him. Start your marriage with the truth. Even the uncomfortable parts. That's more important than any honeymoon. The summer passed differently than I'd expected. Haley and Nathan didn't go to Portugal. They spent their honeymoon week at a cabin in Tofino, which Nathan's parents owned. Not glamorous. But they came back tan and happy, talking about surfing lessons and whale watching. Haley came to dinner every other Sunday. At first, it was awkward. She was careful around me, almost formal. But slowly, gradually, something shifted. We started talking, not about money or the past, but about her cases at the firm, about Nathan's promotion, about the small victories and frustrations of building a life. In September, she called to tell me she'd paid off the credit card balance. All $6,000. I set up automatic payments, she said. It'll be cleared in 8 months, but I wanted you to know I've started. That's responsible. I also transferred the car insurance to my own policy, and the car loan is in my name now. The bank wasn't thrilled, but Nathan co-signed. Good. There was a pause. Marcus, I know I can't undo the speech, or the years I didn't see what you were doing, but I want you to know that I see it now. Not just the money everything. The driving lessons, the science fair projects, the midnight runs to pick me up from parties when I was too afraid to call Dad because I knew he'd just lecture me from Calgary and not actually help. You called me for those? Of course I did. You always came. You never yelled, never made me feel stupid. You just showed up with Tim Hortons coffee and let me sit in silence until I was ready to talk. She sniffed. That's what a father does, Marcus. I just didn't realize it until I almost lost it. Kevin called Haley on her birthday in October. She told me about it during Sunday dinner. He said he wants to reconnect. Now that I'm settled, he thinks we should have a real relationship. She made air quotes. He mentioned maybe visiting for Christmas. What did you tell him? I told him that relationships take work, not just holidays. That if he wants to be part of my life, he needs to actually be part of it, not just the celebrations. How did he take that? He got quiet. Said he had a lot going on, that I didn't understand the pressure he was under. She shrugged. Same things he's been saying for 20 years. But this time, I actually heard them. And? And I told him I loved him, because I do. He's my biological father, and that doesn't just go away. But I also told him that love without presence is just a word, and I'm done accepting words when everyone else has been giving me actions. I looked at my stepdaughter across the dinner table. She wasn't the same girl who'd stood at that reception, thanking the wrong man. She was harder now, in some ways. More realistic, but also more honest. That took courage, I said. I learned it from you, the hard way, but I learned it. A year after the wedding, Haley made partner track at her firm, youngest associate to achieve it in the company's history. She called to tell me before she told anyone else. They're having a ceremony, she said. Small, just the partners and their families. I want you there, Marcus. You and Mom, not Kevin, I didn't even tell him yet. I want you there. The ceremony was at the firm's downtown Vancouver office, on the 43rd floor overlooking the harbor. Haley stood at a podium, accepting her new title, and gave a short speech. I want to thank everyone who supported me on this journey, she said. My husband, Nathan, who keeps me grounded. My mother, Diane, who taught me strength. And my stepfather, Marcus, who spent 23 years showing me what it means to show up, even when no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching. She looked directly at me. 200 lawyers and executives in the room, and she looked at me. Marcus taught me that success isn't something you inherit. It's something you build day by day, with patience and persistence, and a stubborn refusal to give up on the people you love. I wouldn't be standing here without him. Thank you. I raised my glass. This time, the smile was real. Afterward, she found me by the window, looking out at the mountains. Was that okay? She asked. The speech? It was more than okay. I meant it. Every word. I know. She stood beside me, looking at the view. I've been thinking about what you said last year, about silence being erasure, about how you taught me that you didn't matter by never asking for acknowledgement. And I've been thinking about how I want to raise my own kids. When Nathan and I have them, I don't want them to ever wonder who loves them or who shows up for them. I want it to be obvious, clear, no confusion about who's in the background and who's in the spotlight. That's wise. I learned it the hard way. She turned to face me. Marcus, I know I can't go back and redo the wedding speech. Can't undo 23 years of taking you for granted. But I can do better going forward. And I will. That's all any of us can do. She hugged me then, tight and fierce, the way she used to hug me when she was little and I'd come home from a job site covered in dust and sweat. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on me. I almost did, but you didn't. That's what matters. Diane and I had a long conversation that night, after the ceremony. We sat on our back deck, watching the sun set over the North Shore mountains, drinking wine. Do you regret it? She asked, cutting her off. The way you did it. No. She could have struggled, really struggled. She could have, but she didn't. She figured it out. Because she had to. Because she had to. And because she's stronger than either of us gave her credit for. Diane was quiet for a while. Then, I'm sorry too, Marcus, for not standing up for you at the wedding, for not telling Haley the truth about the money all those years. I told myself I was protecting her relationship with Kevin, but really, I was just avoiding conflict. I know. Can you forgive me? I thought about it. About the anger I'd carried, the feeling of being invisible in my own family. About the way Diane had slowly come around over the past year, standing with me instead of against me. I already have, I said, but don't do it again. She laughed, but her eyes were wet. I won't, I promise. I'm 63 now. Haley and Nathan bought a house in Burnaby last spring. She's doing well at the firm, building a reputation as someone who fights for her clients. Nathan got promoted again, something to do with forensic accounting that I don't quite understand but sounds impressive. They had us over for dinner last week. Haley made roast chicken, slightly overcooked, the way I taught her years ago when she was first learning to use the oven. We sat around their dining room table, the one Diane helped them pick out at a furniture store in Richmond. So, Haley said, Nathan and I have some news. Diane's eyes went wide. Are you? Not yet. But we're trying. And we've been talking about the future, about how we want to raise our kids. And? I asked. And we want you both to be part of it, really part of it. Sunday dinners, holiday traditions, the whole thing. She looked at me. I want my children to know their grandfather, their real grandfather, the one who shows up. I felt something loosen in my chest that I hadn't known was tight. I'd like that. There's one more thing. She glanced at Nathan, who nodded encouragingly. I talked to Kevin last month. Told him we're planning to start a family. What did he say? He said he's excited to be a grandfather, that he wants to visit more, be more present. She paused. Then he asked if we could lend him $5,000. Something about a business opportunity he's invested in. I said nothing. Waited. I told him no. And I told him that if he wants to be part of our children's lives, he needs to start being part of our lives first. Consistently. For at least a year, then we can talk about grandparent roles. How did he take that? He said I was being harsh. That family should help family. She smiled, but it was sad. I told him that's exactly what I've been learning. Family does help family. But family also shows up, and he hasn't shown up in 23 years. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I'm proud of you, I said. Not for the partner track or the house or any of that. I'm proud of who you've become. Someone who sees clearly. Someone who values the right things. I had a good teacher. You had a stubborn teacher who took too long to speak up. Better late than never. That night, driving home through the rain, Diane asked me if I was happy. With everything, she said. With how it all turned out. I thought about the wedding reception 2 years ago, standing alone while Haley thanked the wrong man. I thought about the anger and the spreadsheets and the canceled honeymoon. I thought about the hard conversations that followed, the months of awkwardness, the slow rebuilding of something real. I'm satisfied, I said finally. She sees me now. She knows who showed up and who didn't. That's enough. Is it, though? It has to be. Because here's what I've learned, Diane. You can't force people to see you. You can only decide whether you'll accept being invisible. I chose not to. And maybe that cost us time, cost us comfort, cost us a fancy honeymoon. But it gave us truth. And truth is what real relationships have to be built on. Diane reached over and took my hand. When did you become so wise? The day I decided I'd rather be honest than comfortable. I still think about that wedding speech sometimes. About standing in that reception hall. Invisible. While Haley thanked a man who'd barely shown up. I think about the hurt, the betrayal, the bitter arithmetic of $138,000 against Kevin's 10. But I also think about what came after, the hard boundaries, the honest conversations, the gradual rebuilding of something genuine. If I could go back and give myself advice, here's what I'd say. Don't wait 23 years to speak up. Don't convince yourself that silence is noble when really it's just erasure. Love doesn't mean disappearing into someone's life, providing everything while expecting nothing, then wondering why they don't see you. Love means showing up, yes, but it also means being seen, respected, acknowledged, not for the applause, but because that's how real relationships work. They require honesty, they require truth, they require both people to actually show up in all the ways that matter. Haley called me last week. She'd won a big case. Something about a small business owner fighting a corporate landlord. She wanted to tell me before the news went public. You would have loved it, Marcus, she said. The closing argument, the evidence we gathered, it was like putting together a puzzle. Like that diorama project, remember? When we stayed up until 2 in the morning, getting everything exactly right. I remember. I think about that night a lot. How patient you were. How you didn't just do it for me, even though that would have been faster. You taught me how to do it myself. That's the point, I said. Teaching someone to fish. Yeah. She paused. I'm going to teach my kids the same way. The patient way. The way that means showing up even when it's hard. That's the only way that works. I know that now, thanks to you. After we hung up, I sat in my study for a while. The same study where I'd added up those receipts 2 years ago, shaking with anger and hurt. The same study where I'd drafted that email that changed everything. I don't keep receipts anymore. I don't need to. Haley knows who I am now. She knows what I did and why I did it. She sees me, and that's the only thing I ever really wanted. For anyone listening who's in a similar situation, maybe you're a step-parent who feels invisible, or a relative who's always there but never acknowledged, or just someone who gives and gives without ever hearing thank you. Here's what I'd tell you. Your contribution matters, even when no one says so. But silence isn't virtue. It's permission for people to overlook you. You don't have to keep score to deserve recognition, and you don't have to accept being invisible to prove your love. Real love isn't about disappearing into someone's life. It's about showing up, yes, but also about being honest when something's wrong. About having the courage to say, this isn't working for me, even when it's uncomfortable. Because here's the truth I wish I'd learned earlier. People will treat you the way you teach them to treat you. If you accept invisibility, they'll make you invisible. If you stay silent about your contributions, they'll assume you have none. But if you have the courage to speak up, to set boundaries, to demand the truth, even when it's hard sometimes, if you're lucky, the people you love will hear you. They'll see you, and they'll choose to show up for you the same way you've been showing up for them. That's what family is. Not perfect people getting it right the first time, but imperfect people choosing, again and again, to be honest with each other, to see each other, to do the hard work of building something real. Don't let yourself be erased. Your presence matters. Your contributions matter. You matter. And anyone who truly loves you should be willing to say so out loud.